I will say this is Nicole and Brinn from Thrive New England. Can you each talk about your position at Thrive and what is Thrive? That's how I'll start it. And then we'll just go from there. And then I'll be like, goal cut. All right. I hate the starting it because it's been rolling, so I can either do it in 1 take or 8 takes. So we'll see what's going to happen today. And I'm going to drop that.
Okay.
All right. Welcome to Ride for Freedom's final interview with Thrive New England. Today we have Nicole and Brinn, and they're going to talk about their organization based out of Sanford, Maine. Nicole, can you first talk about your position?
Sure. I am the executive director and one of the founders, and help build all the programming and prevention materials and survivor leadership materials and kind of run the organization.
Cool, and let's talk about what Thrive is first, and then Brinn will ask what your position is as well. So what is Thrive New England?
So Thrive educates teenagers primarily and their parents about the dangers of human trafficking and sexual exploitation. And then we also support victim survivors who have experienced it, however they need support.
That's wonderful. And Brinn, what is your position at Thrive?
I am the programming director at Thrive, so I kind of get into the nitty-gritty of all the programming and how we implement it. So I've worked with Nicole on our prevention curriculum. We've worked closely on our curriculum for survivor leadership, and I get the super awesome privilege of working one-on-one with survivors and being able to mentor them and just walk with them through life.
Yeah. And can we talk about kind of how the day-to-day of Thrive works? How does this organization kind of do the things it does?
Sure. So we partner with local schools, churches, and we do presentations. So we can either do kind of a classroom experience for teens, really collaborative workshop kind of experience, and provide practical supports for teenagers to navigate online, and be safe and just kind of develop healthy relationships is kind of how we position it. And we rely on parents and school faculty to help us kind of get into those schools and gain those opportunities. And then most of the time agencies refer survivors or victims to us. And so Brinn can speak to kind of a little bit more what that looks like. But oftentimes we'll have a victim survivor who has very special needs and they're not getting them met in any other context, and so they get referred to us and we can kind of walk them through, whatever it is they need.
Yeah. So our survivor leadership program and those referrals are very flexible because we want to just be able to meet a survivor wherever they're at. So usually we get a referral, we'll give them a call in whatever context they're comfortable meeting in, whether they want to go to a park or to a coffee shop or, have us come to their home, or if they're in an inpatient program, if they'd like us to go there, we do whatever it is that they're comfortable with. So we try to be really flexible and mobile, and we'll have an initial meeting and just talk about, hey, what is it that you need as a need that we can meet, and can we support you through that? And we go from there. So we just try to really keep it light and casual for that initial meeting and sort of let the survivor lead us where they need us to go with them.
Yeah. In a previous interview, someone talked about how it's like someone suffering from human trafficking or anything like that. It's a one-of-one situation. Mm-hmm. How do you kind of deal with that, Brinn?
Really just getting to know the person. I'm a survivor myself, so I have my experiences, but my experiences are never going to be the same as anybody else's. But there's just sort of like a special comfort in a survivor talking with another survivor. There are things that we can say to each other that we would never be comfortable to say to anybody else. Mm-hmm. So just being friendly and open. We have an analogy in some of our trainings of this bridge where we just try to be the bridge so that a person can get from point A to point B. And it's not our job to get them there, but it's our job to be there and be steady and be the same and just be available in whatever they need.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Yeah, and so you were set out of Sanford, Maine. What is the region you kind of work out of?
Primarily Southern Maine and Seacoast, New Hampshire to Manchester area is where we are currently working.
And when people are referred to, is it kind of anywhere or is it in that region?
It's pretty much in that region, but we can travel. Yeah. We're up for it and we're able to currently. So we we just know that the need is great and it's very specific, and we know that we have something to offer. So if there's someone outside of that particular region that needs support, we'll be there.
Right.
And everything is customized. So even the trainings, even the prevention trainings can be customized to this certain demographic, age of the kids, or context. And yeah, we just kind of want to meet people where they are and provide the experience and the knowledge that we have to kind of protect them or support them however we can.
Show them humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really nice. Okay, let's talk about, so you're Southern Maine and New Hampshire. Can you talk, we haven't discussed too much about Maine itself in terms of human trafficking. Can you kind of like paint a picture on what's happening in Maine in terms of these things?
I think pretty much what's happening everywhere is there are vulnerable populations who are just easy targets for predators to exploit them. And so we see that with the migrant population, young people in general, homeless population, which I feel like everywhere is struggling with homelessness right now. And Maine is no different. And so really supporting the needs of all of these marginalized people is what is going to prevent them from being victimized. So that's kind of what we see here.
So it seems like for Thrive New England, prevention is a crucial part of this process. Why is prevention so important?
Well, we've seen the effects of the sexual violence and the complex trauma that comes out of that. And it just motivates us to prevent it from happening. We just really don't want anyone to suffer this way. And so when we engage with kids, we try to make this very real and accessible training for them, and kind of hear from them and get their perspective on what they're seeing. And the thing with the teenagers especially, they can speak in terms of cyberbullying, but there's a lot of extortion happening online and that they don't have language around. They don't even understand what's happening. And maybe it's coming from their peers, but it could also be coming from predators. And so we kind of try to create a space where they can have that conversation and unpack what they're experiencing, and then we can educate around it. Like, you know what that actually is, and you know how this is why it's so harmful, and this is how you can prevent it. Or if it happens to you, these are who you can talk to. These are the people to talk to. This is how to deal with it. Because so many kids are victimized and then they don't know what to do with that. And they feel hopeless, helpless. They think, I'm all alone, I'm the only one, and it's all my fault. And so we try.
And probably a little bit like, how did this happen as well?
Sure, right? Like, how did I let this happen?
Oh, yeah.
A lot of times they take on the blame and they don't feel comfortable talking about it because not enough people are talking about it. They don't have an opportunity to have the conversation. And so we just try to provide that space. And so it's not full of content and information as much as it is trying to give the kids an opportunity to express what's happening and then inform what that is and kind of give them the resources. And yes.
So as you're processing this, Nicole, I'm wondering how receptive schools are to inviting you to come in and share these presentations.
So schools who have seen exploitation, extortion happening, very receptive. They're like, yes, you guys are doing this, we are seeing this, and we need you to come into our schools. And then we have kind of the exact opposite when we reach out to schools that they're not seeing it, not because it's not happening, just because they haven't experienced it. They're like, yeah, no, not here. Probably we don't need that. And then we'll get the call eventually when something happens, unfortunately, and we're there to support. But yeah, we are hopeful with more awareness, like what Freedom Cafe does, and just educating people in general that we'll get into more schools and they'll value the work. And it's hard, I understand, especially now through COVID, that there's not time, there aren't resources to give. So it's hard for us to get into schools, especially now. But it's also, the problem is just not getting better, it's getting worse. So we expect that they'll let us in eventually.
And how long has Thrive been around for?
Officially, we were incorporated officially March 2020.
2020, okay, so.
So I don't know if you remember what was happening.
Yeah, that's quite a
This is
time.
very
Well,
challenging.
congratulations on
Thank
still
you.
being a company right
We're still
now.
here.
That's wonderful.
hanging on.
What
Yeah.
inspired the beginning of Thrive?
I think a group of us in Sanford were having a conversation. We were learning about human trafficking, and we just felt strongly that we needed to do something about it. And we started researching, exploring what was happening in Maine, what resources were out there, and we kind of landed on the need for prevention and awareness, and then also survivor supports. So that's what we think.
Brinn, can you talk a little bit about survivor support?
Yeah, absolutely. Number one, I'll say that Thrive supported me as a survivor. I had, gotten free and gone to an inpatient program for substance use, and they kind of just like completely missed the mark with addressing my trauma. And I got connected with Thrive and went through the survivor leadership program, and eventually through some just really random weird conversations started doing some work with them. But the survivor support is really like the most crucial, and I think the best part of what we do. Prevention is excellent because it illuminates a lot for people that hopefully won't have to have the survivor support. But when I'm talking about survivor leadership, I always use this analogy of Mount Everest. And like, if you were gonna climb Mount Everest, would you wanna talk to a guy who's read every book and knows every statistic and knows where this thing is and that thing is, or would you wanna talk to the guy who climbed to the top and survived?
Right.
And that's what survivor leadership is like, two people sitting and me saying, you know what, I survived that too. Like, this happened to me too. And, I look back at my life and being exploited as an adult, and we get to go do these prevention groups with kids. Like, who can expect a 13-year-old to be able to avoid something that at 28 I couldn't?
Right.
So I think those conversations are so important, and it all flows together so well. And like, my kind of dream of survivor leadership is that one day we'll have like a whole army of us that are survivors, that aren't afraid to speak out, that aren't afraid to talk to kids, that aren't afraid to go out there and say like the worldview and the societal perspective on this is completely wrong.
Right.
Like, it's not just a bunch of women out there who just love sex so much that they want to sell their bodies. That's not the reality of it. And that's how I grew up thinking. And I think a lot of us do, and a lot of kids do, and they don't know how to talk to somebody when that happens. And then, for those who are exploited and they have all this trauma and the complex PTSD, and I mean, you live in a world where absolutely anything can trigger you. You can look at a tree and it triggers you because that trauma is so complex and so deeply embedded in you. And just to be able to talk to somebody that gets it, that says, yeah, one time I saw a leaf on the ground and the next thing I knew I was like completely broken and disassociated because it reminded me of the first time that I was sold or that I was purchased, or whatever it is, or the first time that I was raped, or the grooming process. And there are all these in-depth things that go with it, because it's somebody oftentimes that you love and that you care for that winds up being the person to exploit you. And we see that over and over and over again, that it's a boyfriend or even a family member, and they, get you to a place where you feel like, I owe you something, and I love you enough that I'm willing to do this for you. That I love you enough that I'm going to take this step and do this because you need me to, and I can do it. And, that's the most classic form of coercion. Drugs and love are the most classic forms of coercion. And people, from the outside looking in, that's really hard to understand for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't mind me asking, I tend to ask everyone like you two that are doing very inspiring things, how do you deal with burnout? But specifically for you, Brinn, as being a survivor, is there like a way you have figured out like how to kind of go through this? I mean, I'm sure it brings up harsh memories when you're talking to other people, and how do you cope with that?
I think for me, just continuing to stay in touch with my supports. I have Nicole still coaches me through some life stuff, and I have a really good support system in my life. And I tell all the survivors that I work with, like, something different works for everybody. So I've spent, almost a decade now figuring out what works for me and what can bring me back to a place of peace when I start to get triggered, or I start to feel burnt out, or I start to have anxiety. And I do like all kinds of different things. I do mindful meditations, I pray, I do, I call Nicole or I call somebody and I talk to them. But I think support is the hugest thing, which is the blessing of this program, is because if you join Survivor Leadership, you have a whole team of us that are there that, will pick up your call anytime, whether it's 3 o'clock in the morning. or you need food because you have COVID, we're there. So.
And the other thing I love about survivor leadership is that you don't have to meet any expectation to come in. We'll work with people who are still being exploited, all the way through people who've been out of the life for decades, just because there's still needs. Like Brinn said, there's complex trauma that is really hard to manage sometimes, and maybe hard enough that it's impossible to even walk away from being victimized like that. So we try to be kind of a resource no matter where you find yourself.
How does that work in terms of someone that is like currently being exploited?
Well, Brinn can speak to outreach.
So I do a lot of street outreach. We're really people just know me because I kind of just wander around places and talk to people. I really don't feel like I ever do any work. Like everybody's just like, hey Brinn, how are you? But I just, just trying to be there. So I have, quite a big handful of young women who I see almost every day who I know are still being exploited. In most cases, I know they're traffickers too. So I'll just go check on them, and if they need clothes or water or food or somebody to talk to. And I'm very open about my own past, so they know that I'm somebody that they can talk to, that they can say, this happened yesterday. Like, I went to do this thing and this horrible thing happened to me. Can we talk it through? Can you, listen to me? And that's basically all it is. I'm just kind of being there and being a friend, and if they're ever ready, they know who to come to if they want help getting out of the life. And I make that clear that, I'm not just here to hang out with you and have lunch, but if you ever want help, it's there and I can direct you to it.
Mm-hmm. This is on a similar note of before, but how do you cope with that when you're continuously supporting people that are actively being trafficked? And I'm sure there's a sense of you mentioned, it's about letting them know that whenever they're ready, the support is there. But when you're working with this person who's not ready to come out with what's been happening to them, how do you deal with that? I don't know if I worded that well.
I guess just looking back at my own experience and understanding what it feels like to be in that space. When you're in the space that you're being exploited and this horrible thing's happening to you, and you have this one person that feeds you, that provides you with any substances that you're addicted to, that makes sure that nobody hurts you, that protects you from every single other person in the world except for him or her. If you have this person that you're relying on, it is so terrifying and so scary to walk away. So I think me staying constant in the lives of people and just continuing to be another person that they know they can rely on, that will feed them and help them and talk to them and protect them. I just have hope, I guess. I kind of try to hold their hope until they can have it for themselves, if that makes sense.
I think Brinn's so good at not bringing expectations to the conversation, or the interaction. She just kind of comes in and it's this is what it is. I'm really glad to see you. And that's it. I'm so happy that you're here. And I know I'm speaking for you, but I just witnessed that. It's just really beautiful that if you don't come in with those expectations, then you're not going to be let down when they don't, walk away and come with you.
Do you have a hotline or anything, or are the people you're working with people who know you from being referred or know you on a personal level?
So the people that we work with that are in the Survivor Leadership Program officially are referred usually through Nicole or through our website. We work with a lot of programs, so we get official referrals that way. As far as street outreach and the women I work with who are still being trafficked, they almost all have my cell phone number. I do have 2 phones because it gets a little crazy sometimes, but they have my cell phone number and they can call me if something horrible happens. Of course, when they're out there, there's rapes, there's assaults, there's things like that happen, so they can call me anytime. And like Nicole said, I think it's just about not having any expectation. And I feel if I don't love them where they're at while they're still being trafficked, then who am I to say that I love them afterwards, So.
Can you share a story to kind of paint a picture of how exploitation can happen?
There are all kinds of ways that it happens. Of course, it's different for everybody. One of the most interesting stories that I've heard or gotten to be a part of or experience is a person that I was working with. that actually lived in a place where labor trafficking and sex trafficking were both happening in the same place. So there were people who were being forced to work illegally doing regular jobs, and then in that same context, in that same space, and some of those same people were also being sexually exploited. So it was both labor trafficking and sex trafficking. And then they wound up using drugs as a method of coercion, so there was an element of forced addiction. So then you imagine like this person who had this horrible traumatic experience and then was forced into an addiction and is now reliant on a substance, and the people who are trafficking this person are the people that can provide that. So you just kind of feel stuck in this situation, right. And it's like, almost being in another world where you just can't get out and back to the real world.
Yeah, I see, and because it's like an abuse of power basically, and creating an even deeper level of addiction.
Yeah, there's a deeper level of dependence and loyalty, because for anybody that's in recovery, they know when you're addicted to a substance, like nothing in the world, including yourself, matters as much as that substance. So it was really like, for this particular person, a miracle that they were able to make it out of this situation. And it was just like this random series of steps of going to an office at X place and talking to somebody and, identifying a little bit that this horrible thing happened to me, and then that person knowing somebody who called somebody else to get them into a program, who then called Thrive because they knew about us. So it's really just, all of us staying connected in the work and knowing what's out there, and training for law enforcement officers and, staff at hospitals, walk-in clinics, things like that, because those places can oftentimes be the only place that someone who's being exploited is going to go, that they can get away from their trafficker safely. And if someone in that space knows what to do and who to call, then that might be their only shot.
Right. It seems almost like people that have survived and made out as victims, like it's like happenstance that they are able to kind of get out of those. So I feel like, big thing about Thrive is you need to create these organizations that it might seem like happenstance for the survivors, but it's not. These organizations are here for a reason.
Right.
Yeah.
Awareness,
absolutely.
Training. Right.
So we'd love to do training. We will literally train anybody who asks for training, because the more that people know and the more that people can see, like, for me, because I'm a survivor, a lot of times, like, I can walk around and I can see the signs and two people walking down the street, and I know, this girl's probably being exploited or this guy's probably being exploited, because it's familiar to me.
Yeah.
But, I used to tell people, like, me and my trafficker went to the same grocery store as you, and you never knew. Like, we were just a couple grocery shopping to you.
Yeah.
Like, it's not evident to everybody, so the more training that we can do, like, we love it. We'll just go in and teach people as much as we possibly can and hope and pray that they listen to what we say. We don't know everything, but what we do know, we want to share with people.
I just have one more question for both of you. Is there a way that anyone can help out Thrive?
Yeah, there's lots of ways. You can donate, you can volunteer, you can come to our event on November 4th. We have a big annual auction every year, and it's so fun. Even though, we're raising awareness and we're talking about all the things that are going on that's hard, we have a lot of fun, I think.
Yeah.
And we hear from survivors, and we hear from people doing the work, and we get super competitive around auction items, so come to that.
We have the best auctioneer that you have ever met in your life. Make sure he doesn't learn your name before the auction, because he will call you out.
Don't tell them that. They won't come.
He knows enough
The
names.
classic auctioneer voice.
He'll get it going, but
He's just the best.
So funny.
It's like a show and an
He's
auction. It's awesome.
That's
Yeah.
so fun.
Cool.
And what's your website for people to find this information?
ThriveNewEngland.org.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Nicole, Brinn, thank you so much for coming. This was the final interview for Ride for Freedom.
Yay!
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Amazing.